Hello and welcome everyone to the Propelling Business Excellence podcast. And I'm very excited today because we have Tom Patterson from Patterson Law Firm. So he's the founder of Patterson Law Firm. So thank you very much, Tom, for joining us today. Really appreciate your time here. I know you're very busy. So would you kick us off with your background and what does your business do?
First, I want to thank you for having me. And as to my background, I've been practicing law since 1979.
Oh,
And
wow.
I was with a very large Chicago law firm for many years. I started my own firm in 2000, April 14th, 2000, actually a date that's burned on my memory. And we've been practicing law in Chicago and in other cities and states ever since then. And we've grown from the law firm where I started it by myself to where we now have about 15 lawyers plus staff members.
Wow, that's amazing. And what inspired you to start your entrepreneurial journey?
Well, what I thought is that several other law firms that I was a member of were making mistakes in management and so forth. And so I decided that I could do it better. And rather than spending the time to try to convince my partners to do this, that, or the other thing, I
Hmm.
figured if I started my own firm, I could do this, that, or the other thing. And if it didn't work, I would have only myself to blame. So I thought that I would enjoy the additional freedom and the responsibility that would come from starting my own firm. And I did have some ideas that I wanted to implement, and some of have implemented successfully, and some haven't worked out as well as I thought they would. But it's been an interesting journey, and it's kept me interested and involved. And I recommend it to people that are entrepreneurially inclined because it is very interesting.
Yeah, but it does come with a lot of risks and challenges as well.
It's interesting that, when I was practicing at the large law firm, staff did everything. I didn't have to think about what the office lease was, what the copier cost was,
Right.
hiring staff members and so forth. And then all of a sudden, when I was the manager of my own firm and was starting it, I had to think about leases of copiers and leases of space and who to hire as secretaries or paralegals or other lawyers. And so it was a totally different skill set than what I was used to. But on the other hand, that challenge was really worthwhile, I think.
That's great. Yeah, you have to be involved in so many other different things.
Right. And practice
Definitely.
law besides, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you started your entrepreneurial journey, I guess what are the some business misconceptions about running a business and how do you address them?
Well, I think that there's a misconception that it's easy. And I think there's a misconception that you can do without systems at the start. And so it's worthwhile to read and study other people's experiences with managing their own firm or a startup firm, and to try to learn from their experiences. And I've certainly learned a lot from my journey.
Yeah, that's great advice. That was also my reason of starting this podcast too, so we can all learn from people like you who have gone through this entrepreneurial journey and grown the business so much.
There was a fellow a long time ago who took over the Avis company, and he wrote a book called Up the Organization, which I thought was an interesting read. And he thanked, in the preface, he thanked American Express for being big enough to allow him to make all his mistakes so that he could learn from his mistakes and then apply them to hopefully improve Avis. And he did transform Avis rental car into a real powerhouse. So
Oh,
I guess
that's a
we
great
all have that
story.
experience. Yeah, we all have that experience to some extent.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. So you have grown the company so much. How is your work-life balance? How do you maintain it, and how do you stay motivated and focused?
Well, I think it's easy practicing law if you like it. There are a lot of people that don't like it. I used to think that there was a kind of a 7-year burnout period, and if you practice law for 7 years and you still liked it, then you would continue with it. And if you didn't like it, you might go in-house to work for a corporation, or you might get a new career. I know somebody who did real estate as a career instead of practicing law. So if you like the practice of law, then yes, you have to make sure you don't burn out. And the question is whether you have sufficient hobbies uh, and other interests in order to keep your mind off the law at some point. On the other hand, if law is really interesting to you, I think at least early in your career, you're going to devote even some off office hours to learning about it and trying to improve your skill set. And I agree with what Warren Buffett says, you should invest in yourself. And so when you invest in your own ability to learn law and to obtain new skills and to hone the skills that you have, then I think you're going to have a more fulfilling career. I should note, however, that in 2009, I wrote a book that was published by the American Bar Association on preliminary injunctions and temporary restraining orders, which are important in many business cases. And I thought that even though it was related to the law and even though it was just writing, it's like writing a brief, but it
Mm-hmm.
was still interesting enough because of my audience concern and because of dealing with the publisher and so forth, that it was something that I think in some ways helped my work-life balance. So then in 2013 or 2014, I started to write a history book, a biography on the politician Huey Long from Louisiana, who was assassinated in 1935 and who was the model for the novel All the King's Men and the movie All the King's Men. And so I've written that biography, and that took about 10 years. And I now have a publishing contract to do that. So that has been a whole new set of challenges. I've had to deal with agents, lawyers, copyright, the book publisher, and then we'll get into the marketing of the book, hopefully, when it comes out in the spring of 2025. So if you can see that while I haven't strayed too far from my beaten path of writing and analyzing things, if you write about a person, a biography, then that's a little bit different than working on a particular case. Although I have to admit that there's certain similarities. So it's not like I have a hobby of snowboarding or skiing or skating or something like that. I have to be careful.
So writing books is your hobby?
So far, yes. Now, if the book is a failure, then I won't continue. But if the book sells well, then I think that I might write another one. I have a couple more ideas in mind.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. It's like work as a hobby.
Yeah, yeah. But there's no heavy lifting, right? That's the one thing about practicing law or writing history books is that it's not difficult on your body unless you keep sitting in the same chair for too long, and then you get out of shape. But other than that, there's no heavy lifting. It's not like construction work or plumbing work or electrical work. It's a lot easier. Just have to use your mind.
Hmm. Yeah, that's great. And what was the other book you mentioned you have written?
I wrote a book for lawyers called Temporary Restraining Orders and Preliminary Injunctions, How to Handle the Business Emergency. And so what I found from practicing law before I wrote the book was that oftentimes in certain kinds of business disputes, you needed to get a preliminary injunction before you even had the full trial on the merits in order to preserve your client's ability to get an effective remedy. And I liked those kinds of proceedings because they allowed you to get to trial faster.
Hmm.
Normal case might take 2, 3, even 4, 5 years before it goes to trial. But an injunction usually arises in the middle of an emergency, and you have to go to court right away. You have to prepare your pleadings fast, your affidavits fast, put on your witnesses fast. And so that was a lot more fun to me. And I found that not every lawyer has that experience, and therefore I thought it would be useful to write a book about the subject.
Okay, I see. Is that book available like on Amazon or where can
Probably
I find it?
Amazon or through the American Bar Association. Yeah, the American Bar Association asked us to do a second edition in 2021. And so the first edition was in 2009, which I wrote with the help of some other people. And then in 2021, we published the second edition. Mike Haberly, my current managing partner, helped me with that. So we are listed as co-authors on that book.
Okay. That's great. Yeah, I would love to get the links so we can post it on that YouTube.
Sure, happy to.
All right. Thank you. So could you offer some glimpse into your, what's your plan for your business for next like 1 to 3 years?
It's interesting to have to manage the different opportunities that come along. And um, obviously, we have to continually reinvent ourselves without losing the expertise that got us to where we are. So we have quite a bit of experience in shareholder disputes, in suing lawyers or accountants, in dealing with construction lawsuits, in suing insurance companies, and doing similar things like that. So all kinds of business disputes are within the ambit of our uh, law firm experience. But like the fastest growing area is people losing their cryptocurrency. And
Mm,
so we have 2 lawyers now out of 15, who devote a substantial amount of their time to recovering people's cryptocurrency that's been lost or um, absconded with by different companies. And so we always keep up to date on new developments in the law. And I think that we are trying to analyze artificial intelligence and what impact that is going to have on our practice. We're always looking to expand the platforms through which we make our services available. We are looking to expand our outreach program to different, perhaps underserved minority groups, Hispanics, Black people, Polish people, uh, people from India, people from Pakistan, and so forth. And because I think in some ways those people are underserved. So we're working hard to try to expand our lawyers to include people who are bilingual, and then also trying to improve our marketing efforts in those communities. So we've attended the Hispanic um, Association of Commerce, and we go to meetings like that to try to expand that. So I think that in addition, we're trying to attract more women to the profession. At the top of my firm, you will see a lot of males, but at the lower levels, which will soon reach the top, we have mostly women, and I
mm.
think that trend will continue, and we're happy about that.
Okay, so more diversity,
Yes.
inclusion. Okay. And then you said AI on practice and got it. I think you didn't talk much about your business as such. It seems like you have quite variety of practices going on there, right?
We
Could you
do.
tell us,
We
yeah,
have
what
about
type of lawyers?
Yeah, we have about 10 or 15 different practice groups, and it's all litigation. So we don't do transactional work. If somebody wants to go public, they'll have to use a different law firm. If somebody wants to get a divorce, they'll have to use a different law firm. If you get pulled over for DUI, different law firm. So we concentrate our practice in business disputes, but those involve a wide variety of matters. Many of them involve contracts. A lot of them involve corporate governance or LLC governance, partnership contracts. And then we are willing to sue other professionals, for example, law firms, if they make mistakes and disadvantage their clients. We are willing to sue other law firms to get damages for our clients. We've sued accounting firms, engineering firms, law firms, and so forth, if necessary, and if our clients were disadvantaged by their conduct.
I see. So mainly, I think the major category is the business disputes.
Yes, business disputes. And a lot of people think, well, if you do business disputes, you can do, bylaws and partnership agreements and employment contracts. We can do that, and we do that for some people, but it's not our area of practice. And it would probably be a little bit more expensive for us to do it than for someone who does this kind of work every day. So we wait until there's a dispute, and we will try to resolve a dispute with mediation, with settlement discussions, arbitration, or litigation. So we try to handle each and every aspect of a dispute and try to resolve it for a reasonable cost.
I see. That's understandable. Thank you. So going back to your, plans for the next 1 to 3 years, you mentioned about cryptocurrency, about diversity, bringing women to the top. I think there were a lot of good things that you're planning, and also implication of AI on your law practice. What obstacles do you see in achieving your goals for next 1 to 3 years?
Well, I think that there are significant obstacles to improving our diversity. We haven't had any difficulty attracting women lawyers, so we've been okay on that. But I think that some of the larger firms are also trying to improve their diversity, and so it is difficult for us to compete with them for good candidates. And so that's an obstacle. The artificial intelligence, I don't know what the obstacle is there, and I suppose that is the obstacle, that we don't really know what the obstacle is.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
I mean, at some level, lawyers, especially people my age or with my experience level, we're paid for judgment more than our technical proficiency. So the younger lawyers at my firm are much more familiar with technology than I am. And so I am paid at this point in my career, paid more for my judgment than for being a whiz on the keyboard. And nevertheless, with artificial intelligence, the fear is that that will make some of what lawyers do obsolete. I don't think it will. I think our core competence is communication, interviewing a client, negotiating with an opponent, advocating to the court or the jury. And there's a variety of different communication styles and approaches that are necessary depending on the circumstance. So you need to be an expert at questioning your client so that you can really get to the root of the difficulty. You need to try to negotiate a win-win solution if you can with your opponents. And you need to advocate for your client's position in front of the court or the jury.
Mhm.
Also, then you need to communicate within your firm to make sure that everybody knows what we are trying to do and how we are trying to do it. And we all have different styles, different methodologies, different backgrounds, but we try to approach cases in a unified way. We're civil to opponents, we are factual to courts and juries, and we think that that's the best way to advance our clients' interests.
Yeah. Yeah, no, AI is changing quite a lot, and a lot of businesses are trying to figure out also how that is impacting their business as such.
Yeah. You probably heard the case where one law firm used artificial intelligence to write a court brief, but the artificial intelligence made up 4 different case citations and put those in the brief when the cases did not exist. So naturally, the court was very upset about that and took action against the lawyers that did that.
Oh gosh. Yes, you need to verify for sure. Can't take everything as is.
Right.
You can get some help, but verify. All right. So I guess with this, the last question that I have for you is what advice would you offer to the aspiring entrepreneurs or the people who have been running the business for a long time that are experiencing some challenges? So, what's one
I
thing
think
your advice?
I think in a profession, you will get a lot of advice to avoid micromanaging. But I think in a profession, that advice has to be seriously modified because younger, less experienced lawyers that come into your organization have to be taught what to do and how to do it. And so a certain amount of micromanaging is necessary until you have the systems and training in place to make sure that younger people in your profession are capable of doing the work that has to be done. And I think further, I think rather than hire inexperienced people, I think it's better if you can hire experienced people if you are starting out, like me as a sole practitioner, and then adding people, because if you add someone inexperienced, you have to spend a lot of time training them when typically an entrepreneur is trying to get out there and get new business and then still practice law. So if you hire somebody experienced, you can reduce the amount of time you spend training them, and then you can still spend your time getting business, networking, and practicing law, which is what the clients are actually paying you for anyway.
Right.
And then once you have some experienced people with you, then you can work on training younger lawyers to come in. There are certain advantages to hiring younger lawyers. You can train them the way you want them to be trained, whereas an experienced person may have developed some habits that don't quite jive with what you are trying to do. But in the end, I think you need a mixture of experience and fresh blood in order to make an organization thrive.
Yeah, that's a great point. Because I think as the companies are starting a new business, they generally try to hire inexperienced people because they're trying to save some money.
Exactly, and that's what I did. So I've learned that lesson from experience.
So other people can learn from you.
Right,
That's
right,
great advice.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you very much, Thomas or Tom Patterson. Really great having you. We learned quite a lot. It was a session packed of information and definitely love the advice that you provided. So thank you so much for your time. And for our listeners, look forward to seeing you in the next episode.